How do I start this? I gotta think about it. So, I worked at Pixar for a number of years on a bunch of different movies. Or, in meme format, I worked on all these movies, not you, at Pixar. And now I've been at Google for a number of years working on projects like Cardboard and Tilt Brush and Playground. And these are both amazing companies, but surprisingly similar and yet different in a bunch of different ways. And so whenever I learned something interesting, I jot it down. And then I thought, oh, this might make for an interesting video. So, here are 12 lessons learned from Pixar and Google. Number 1. Friendship is magic. So having friends is probably one of the most important things in life. Unfortunately, there's no secret formula for making friends. Or is there? I don't remember where I saw this, but it really did ring true. The people that you end up becoming friends with are in large part influenced by proximity. And so the people that you're close to physically are the people that you end up seeing a lot. And those repeated interactions over time develop into a shared history. And that's how friendships develop. So there's two things about this that are interesting. One is you might think that it have to be like really interesting or cool or something to be somebody's friend. But mostly what it boils down to is just spending that time with them. And also not being a jerk, not making them uncomfortable. So focus on being a good person, and then the rest kind of follows. But then the other thing is that it's really hard to be friends with somebody that you don't see very often. And so it kind of relies on that shared history. And so kind of think about that, like if you ever move to someplace else or you ever transition to other things and you just don't see the same people again, like you have to invest quite a bit more in those relationships. And of course, can be really worth it because those are the people that you have the most shared history with. Number 2, priorities. Another thing that I heard is that priorities are not something that you set, but discover. And by this I mean you really discover what your priorities are because they are the things that you're willing to sacrifice other things for. For example, at Pixar, everybody often said, well, story is king. And so that was obviously supposed to be a priority. But a lot of people say that. A lot of studios will say, oh, story is the most important thing. But at Pixar, it was really evident because they were willing to sacrifice so many other things for that. Like sometimes they would cancel entire projects or fire directors or like get rid of weeks and weeks of work that other people had done because like the story didn't quite fit right. And that was a little bit frustrating as an effects TD, but I kind of got it, right? That's what Pixar's priority is. That's what they're willing to sacrifice other things for to achieve. And so at Google, for example, the mission statement is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible or something like that. And you can kind of tell because sometimes they'll cancel projects even if they're really successful or well liked or something because it doesn't really feed into what they think is a priority. And like you got to sacrifice other things to focus in on that. And you can kind of do this in your own life as well. This is an important thing. A lot of people will say, oh, my family is my priority, or my work is my priority, or my relationships are a priority. But you can't like make everything a priority. You can only do one thing. And so if something is going to be your priority, you have to be willing to sacrifice other things for it. For example, I'm focusing on making this video, and so that means I'm sacrificing time to like do my hair, because I can't really do two things at once. Or Number 3, revenue solves all known problems. Eric Schmidt, the head of Google for a bunch of years, liked to say that revenue solves all known problems. Interestingly, this applied to Pixar as well. At one point, Pixar was getting a lot of flack for making a bunch of sequels. But here's the thing, Cars 2, the one movie that I didn't work on while I was there, is part of a billion-dollar franchise. And that lets Pixar make movies like Up, which is really about an old man who abducts a strange boy in a house filled with balloons. And it's not exactly an easy sell to most studios. That said, if you looked at the Pixar movies and sorted them by revenue, well, here are the list of sequels, and here are the Oscar winners. So, not a lot of correlation there. Turns out that Oscar winners can be just as profitable as sequels. On the other hand, here are the movies that I worked on while I was there. So, I'm not saying that the movies won Academy Awards because I worked on them, but correlation or causation? You be the judge. Number 4, managing up and managing down. I've had managers my whole career, but there were a couple of situations at Google where they needed a manager and I was the only person that was willing to do it, and so I became a manager for 2 occasions. And I learned some interesting stuff while I was a manager. The most important was probably that the biggest influence on how you feel about your job is who your manager is and what your relationship is with them. So that's a very heavy responsibility. But the other thing is this phrase, managing up and managing down. So managing up refers to how you manage your relationship with, say, your boss, their boss, the directors, etc. And then managing down refers to how you manage your relationship with your direct reports and how you deal with like mentoring and peers and all this other stuff. And one of the things I kind of felt is that managing up, doing that well, is good for your career. But managing down and doing that well is good for your soul. Number 5, dreams versus opportunities. There's a saying, follow your dreams, which is fantastic because dreams can help inspire and motivate you to do way more than you'd normally otherwise do. But there is a little bit of a dark side to that. While I was working at Pixar, I would often hear people from outside literally tell me, oh my gosh, I would love to have that job. I would do it for free. Which, I mean, like, okay, I guess that's cool, but like, it does imply that there's always going to be people that are going to be willing to work for less than me. Like, I mean, I'm kind of joking because it's not like anybody can just go and work there. Like, you need to have specific training, certain experience, certain skills, or whatever. But, there are positions that require less specific skills or experience, and there's this possibility for an unscrupulous company, especially, to take advantage of that, to exploit that, where they would say something like, well, you know what, this is your dream job, so I'm not really going to pay you much. Or I'm going to like make you work super long hours. Or I'm going to take advantage of the fact that you love to do this, or this is what you wanted to always do. So you got to kind of watch out for that a little bit. And on the flip side, there are opportunities. And sometimes these are things that you don't even think of. Like, it wasn't like my dream to go and work as a software engineer at Google. It was just sort of an opportunity that came up. And I was like, well, I obviously can't turn that down. But the reason is they have amazing projects and incredibly talented people. But it's also the fact that they treat their employees really, really well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that dreams can pull you forward, but make sure they don't hold you back. Don't let them kind of close off your eyes to other opportunities that are out there, because the other opportunities might pull you even further. Number 6, focus versus flexibility. So this isn't really so much a lesson as an observation. And what it is like, over the time that I was at Pixar, I observed that like I was more of a generalist, and so if anything, I tended to work on like the non-photorealistic effects, like force fields, lava walls, and ice bridges and things like that. But those are not the sort of thing that come up a whole lot in Pixar movies. So I kind of dabbled in that, and then I also dabbled in things like dust and debris, a lot of rain shots, and as a result, I was working on a bunch of different things. I even worked in a couple other departments as well. But then there were other people there that would tend to work on just one thing, like say a water sim. And they would just do that their entire career, but they would get really, really good at it. And so as a result, they had a certain level of expertise that was just unmatched anywhere else. And so I guess what I'm saying is, if you have an expertise, if you do a focus on something, then you're going to have an expertise that's uncommon and makes it a little bit easier for you to get other kind of things. But the flexibility, though, comes into play when other opportunities show up. So for example, one of the other things that I did was I dabbled in iPhone apps, and I also like to draw and all these other things. But as a result of some of that programming experience, well, I was able to kind of parlay that into a software engineering position at Google. And so I guess the thing is, focus is good to develop an expertise and will give you opportunities in that field because it's a rarefied thing. But flexibility will give you opportunities in many different fields. So you just kind of have to decide what's more important to you. Number 7, working solo or working with others. Now, in my career, I'm almost always working with other people, and it's great because you get the chance to be collaborative and get other people's input, and you can create something more than what you could create on your own. But one of the things about working with other people is that it does require a lot of communication, and it also requires managing a bunch of different things, different people and their expectations and their desires at the same time. So this can be kind of challenging. One of the things about doing something on your own, like your own little project, is that you get to decide pretty much everything about it. And so that can be kind of liberating. In my personal stuff, the things that I like to do as a hobby, like doing iPhone apps, doing drawing, sometimes making comic books, writing, that sort of thing. I like to do these things because these are just dependent on me. I don't have to rely on other people or other people's permission to do these things. I think I get more out of it in a sense. I have more freedom as a result. And so this is one of the things I would say, like, just be conscious of that. And if you're finding frustration when you're working with other people, then like just consider maybe there are some projects that you could do on your own that might be also interesting. But then if you can, there's a lot of reward and a lot of benefit to being able to work with other people in a collaborative nature. So yeah. Number 8, hard work is irrelevant. Now, It sounds kind of harsh, but what I'm really saying is you should focus on your results. Google in particular, the way the evaluations are done is a lot of it is self-evaluation, but a lot of it is focused on impact. And so what that means is you could spend hours and hours and hours on something, but if in the end it doesn't have much of an impact, then it doesn't really count. And so, like, software engineers, for example, are all salaried. It doesn't really matter how many hours we put into a thing. It's more about the results that we're trying to get. That said, like, if you only show up for 2 hours a day, then you're probably not going to have as much of an impact. But this is, I think, applicable in all sorts of other things as well. If you are working really hard, but not achieving the thing that you want to, then sometimes you need to take a step back and think about it from a longer term or a more holistic view and see, like, what is it exactly that I'm trying to achieve? And to serve that goal, what is the most important thing that I need to be working on right now? I think that way you'll be able to find better results for the work that you put into it. Number 9, uncertainty is stressful. Now, that seems pretty obvious, but what to do about it is not. There were a bunch of times at Pixar and at Google where the future was a little bit uncertain. And as a result, I'd feel a lot of stress. But if you think about it, where does that stress come from? Well, it usually happens because either you're in a situation or you're responsible for a situation and it's got to change and you feel completely powerless. And so it's that inability to affect the future that makes you feel that stress. But there's always something that you can do. Sometimes you can just focus on the task at hand and just make that as good as possible. Sometimes you can think about contingency plans and like say, okay, this is happening, then I'm going to try to do this. If that happens, I'm going to try to do that. But regardless, it just helps to focus on the things that you can change over the things that you can't. But the other thing is also try to be mindful of the fact that uncertainty is stressful and like give yourself a little bit of space if you can and just take that into account in all the other things. Like, well, maybe don't take on a bunch of other tasks if you know that this stress is coming. But, sometimes it's unavoidable. Which brings us to number 10, failure. One thing that Pixar and Google have in common is that they're both really high-performing companies, and they demand a lot of excellence. But, to be honest, I'm not the greatest effects artist, and I'm kind of a mediocre software engineer, so I fail, like, a lot. And failing sucks. It hurts, it makes you doubt yourself, you wonder if other people think less of you. I mean, it's just awful. So, like, don't ever fail. But if you never fail, it means you're not really pushing yourself. And if you're not pushing yourself, you're not growing. So don't be afraid of failure. Failure is the most important part about becoming a better human being. It means that you're trying. Number 11, the most important knowledge in the world. The most important thing you can know is to know yourself. Now, here's 3 things that I know about myself. 1, I really like people. 2, I'm kind of impulsive. And 3, well, it's not important. But knowing yourself helps you make better decisions. And after like so many decades on this planet, I feel like I have a better understanding of the kind of situations that I'll thrive in and also the kind of things that I'm going to struggle with. At Google, I had no idea like if I'd be a decent manager or not, but I gave it a shot. Turns out I'm okay. Not the greatest, not the worst, but it helped me understand the sort of things that are important to me. And then same with being a software engineer. It's like I hadn't really done it before. And again, not the greatest, but I did have a better understanding of myself after I tried it and a better understanding of the things that I'm capable in the future. But here's the thing, you can never completely know yourself. Like, you have to know what you would be like in every single situation, and you haven't been in every single situation. So what you can try to do instead is try to push yourself to be in new situations, and these will always help you out in the future. Which brings us to number 12, our final lesson. Be uncomfortably excited. This is a phrase that I heard at Google, but I think it applies to Pixar as well, and life in general. And the idea is that you should strive to be uncomfortably excited. Excited because you think it could lead to something good, but uncomfortable because it's something unknown. I think we're often given or could seek out opportunities that we shy away from because we're afraid. And the phrase is saying it's okay to be afraid, that you should feel uncomfortable sometimes. Sometimes things are worth doing because they're unknown. Sure, it could lead to failure, and even then it'll be a good lesson. But there's always a chance. I mean, small, but there's always a chance that something great could come out of it. So, like, I kind of feel that way about my hair. Like, how's it gonna look? I don't know, but I'm kind of uncomfortably excited. Let's see. Oh, okay. That's not terrible. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, I kind of like it. Well, anyways, there you have it. It's 12 lessons learned from Pixar and Google. Thank you for watching. Do you know why I do the things with you at the end? It's because you're really cute and people like watching you. But also, it's kind of nice to see little videos of my child interacting and doing stuff so that when you're older and you go away and you move out of the house, you can go back and look at these videos and I still have a little bit of Dyson in there.